Hey guys, and welcome to the Pacific Coast Auto QuestionCast. We're back again, and this is great because we haven't been around for probably about 3 or 4 months doing these QuestionCasts. They used to be on my personal channel, but now we're moving them over to the Pacific Coast channel, and we're going to be doing it every 2 weeks or so. And so you get to write the questions in the comments section. We're going to put them onto the paper, and we're going to ask them and answer them. And so, what kind of category of questions can we ask, Paul?
Basically anything. We can do stuff about exporting or importing. We can do personal feelings about cars. We can do personal life stuff as long as we feel like answering whatever it is. We can do questions about Japan, exporting from Japan.
And the questions are all going to be me and Paul and sometimes Andrew and probably not Naoko. She said no over there. And so if you have any questions, post them in the comments section here, and we're going to get to it right away. And so our first question here is from Joe Dirt. And he says, if I imported a Nissan Skyline R32 into the United States, would it be legal if I pay a body shop to do a full R34 body conversion? The VIN number would still be an R32, right?
You're in the office, it's going to happen. Keep going.
It's inevitable. Paul, do you want to take this, or do you want me to hammer at it first?
I can do this one. So in the U.S., if a car is past 25 years old, it's basically exempt from emissions and everything like that. Once the car is imported, it's just like having a 68, Camaro or something like that. You can engine swap it, body swap it, as long as it conforms to the basic road safety rules, like road ride height and things like that. Then you absolutely can do this.
Think about what people do with the Volkswagen Beetles. Like, that car is used for kit cars for so many different things, like your Ferraris or Panteras or whatever you want. And so once the car is federal and it's legal in the U.S., you can do whatever you want to your car as long as the state allows you to do that. And so I don't know the state rules, so if your state allows you to do body kits and conversions like that, then it's really up to you how far you want to go.
Yeah, I think in most places, if you bought 32, you could put in the 6-speed, R34 engine, R34 bodywork, R34 dash.
You could. And people actually in Japan do the conversion for that too. You'll see people do like the front end conversion on an R32, sometimes even a rear end conversion. And you probably can't find those cars at auction because they're not that common, and so don't try to look for one. But they sometimes happen where you see one. But they always, in my mind, look a little bit strange because the roof and the windshield and the windows don't look like an R34, and if you know the car well enough, as soon as you see it, you're like, wow, there's something wrong with that car.
Yeah,
It
it's
looks
just
a little bit
off.
Weird.
Right.
But for people who don't know the R34s, even so, I mean, it is a cool car to have something that's like that, in my mind. Next question is from Cholo Lucifer. The R32 got so inflated in price, what's a good substitute? Now, I wanted you, Paul, to answer this one because I can't think very well on the spot, and I didn't do any planning for this video.
Okay, so basically, it depends on what you consider a substitute, right? Like, there's a ton of good cars to import, or something that's Skyline related. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is if you don't want a 32 GTR, then get a GTST. The GTST, I mean, this says just 32, but GTST prices went up a lot as well, but they're still cheaper than 34s, and they're a really great car. I think sometimes they live in the shadow of the GTR a little bit. God, there's a ton of good rear-wheel drive kind of turbo Grand Touring cars, though. I mean, the Soarer is legal now, and the older ones. Even the 4-doors, the Toyotas are always really good. The JZX-81 and the 91. The Fliegel. From Nissan, there's not really one from Nissan, right? Was the Leopard available in manual?
No, the Leopard was only automatic, and the Leopard used like the Fairlady's engine, not the RB engine, and so...
I'm just trying to think of something Nissan that fits. Could you get a Leopard RB20?
A substitute for an R32, a good one would be the S13 Silvia, because they're cheaper than Skylines, and so they are cool cars.
I was thinking
sports car from Nissan, maybe Pulsar GTIR, because that's it's 4-wheel drive, but it's still a turbo 220 horsepower car. So...
I mean, we could get a lot into like cool sports cars. I was trying to think of something that's similar to an R32 in like kind of size and design. But like the Soarer comes to mind. That's kind of similar shape and
I think the Laurel is a good car. Like, so
That's a
if
good
you're
one.
looking for a rear-wheel drive drift car, the Laurels are great. They have the same engine as the Skyline, but they're 4 doors, and they have a really cool B-pillar, or lack of B-pillar, so you can roll down both windows, and you have directly from the A-pillar to the C-pillar is completely open, and it's like this big.
Right.
But do you want to read one?
Yeah, I'll do one. This one's to you. This is great because it says, "Hi, Derek." So from John Park, 1029. Hi, Derek. Would Japan be fit to host something of similar scale and caliber to the Monterey Car Week, including concours, auctions, races, etc.? Is there a big market for vintage car auctions in Japan? Appreciate your feedback. All the best, John.
I'm not sure if it's a great question for me because I don't really know what the Monterey Car Week is.
It's basically like Speed Week kind of stuff. It's a concourse for vintage. It's basically a giant vintage car festival. So for Monterey Car Week, it's a bunch of old 60s Ferraris and Mercedes and things like that. And they do a concourse show where they have these nicely restored original ones. And then they have racing. They'll do vintage races at a racetrack nearby. I think Laguna Seca is where they do it. And then they'll do auctions for some of the cars that are for sale. It's like a big weekend like that. So I guess the closest thing here would be Nostalgic 2 Days.
Could be. I think that events here in Japan are very often not longer than 1 or 2 days, simply because people here work too hard and they don't have enough time to get away from stuff like that. Even like the big car shows here, they're open for a week, but they're really only frequented on the 2 days that are on the weekend. And so big events like that are, I think, a little bit harder to pull off. As far as the auctions go, I think Japan has no auctions like that.
I don't know of any.
And people just buy from the regular auctions that we buy from. And Concours grade cars are still sold through those types of auctions, but it's not like in the US where they're like super duper expensive cars, millions of dollars going through an auction. I think that if sellers in Japan want that sort of treatment, they would send the cars over to the US. We actually, funny story, we bought a Porsche 356 that was in Japan, then it got sold to the USA, then it got sold and back in Japan, and then we sold it and it went to France. And so it's been all over the world. So cars of a certain level, they travel around a lot anyway. So you might find that because the market for that is so big in the US, there's just less market in Japan for that. It's going on a branch a little bit. I don't know if that's going to be true.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because the vintage car scene here is really different. Like, I can't think of any kind of like a Barrett Jackson type thing for vintage Japanese cars where everyone stands around and does this. But they do have swap meets. Like Nostalgic 2 Days in Tokyo is 2 days where they do a big show and swap meet, and cars will be for sale there.
Really?
That's a good one.
How come we haven't ever gone there?
Because I haven't dragged you to it yet. We should go this year. That'll be after the first of the year, and then that's like January, February, so it's coming up. And then the Asami Hill Climb. Is that the name of it?
I don't
There's
know
a
any of
vintage.
these.
So yeah, there's a really big vintage car race, and I'll have to double check it. I'll maybe put a link in the description or something. I think it's called the Asami Hill Climb. I may have that completely wrong, but there's a mountain where they do a vintage car race, and they have old Ferraris and European cars as well as vintage Japanese cars, collector cars, and they do like a hill climb event. But the thing about Japan is they usually don't have mixed events like that, right? It's like it's a race weekend or a car show. Like I'm trying to think of a Japanese
I'm
event.
nodding my head because I don't know the answer.
In Japan, I can't think of an event where it's like there's a car show part of it and a race part of it, and
I've seen car show and races, but never with an auction attached to it.
yeah, you usually get like kind of a swap meet, maybe for vintage cars especially. It's usually part.
But the vintage car market here is pretty big. There are a lot of people who really like the old cars, and so especially outside of the.
Do you know who would know?
Daniel.
Daniel.
Daniel Grady.
Daniel Grady would know. He would know. Wasabi Cars.
Yeah, so that channel, Wasabi Cars, if you don't already know, you probably do, but that channel, he loves looking at the old car shows, so go check it out. What's next?
This one is for you because I know nothing about these.
The last one was for me. Come on. I don't wanna answer too many questions.
Ray0176 asks, I want a Mazda Rx-3 or Rx-2 to California. How much?
First, we'll start off by saying that when you're importing to California, most cars aren't allowed because California has special emissions. Crap. And
No, carb. It's called carb.
I'm sorry. Freudian slip there. And so these cars are old enough so that you don't have to worry about that. 1976, I know this because I'm super clever. Cars older than 1976.
86.
76.
86?
76.
76!
I'm looking at Andrew there because he was the one who corrected me. I thought it was like 78 or 79, but I'm okay. It's okay if I'm wrong about that because I'm not from the U.S. So.
And I wasn't dumb enough to try and own vintage cars in California.
If the car's older than 1976, then you don't have to go through the emissions crap. Sorry.
Stuff.
And so we get actually a lot of inquiries about people who want to buy cars like the Skyline to California, and we have to tell them the same answer. You can import it to California, but you can't register it there. If you go through all the emissions stuff, it's possible, but it's extremely expensive. We don't know exactly because it's going to be case specific per car what you're going to need to change, but it's roughly in the range of about $8,000, $12,000. Is that right?
That seems to be the average. The thing is, it's intentionally vague, right? So when you show up to the testing facility, they can kind of decide on the spot what you need to pay to do what.
I kind of have a feeling too that if you take two of the exact same cars there on different days, they'll give you a different price just because there's that much flexibility in what they can charge, and they don't do too many cars as far as I know. I don't know of any that have really gone through from Japan.
Yeah, I mean, there's some reports online, but it's mostly...
You don't want to trust things online too, right?
Yeah.
Except for our videos.
Don't trust the internet.
And the other part of that is the Mazda Rx-3 and Rx-2. We had a customer about 3 years ago intent on buying an Rx-3 from Japan, and we looked through every dealer listing and every auction, and not one was for sale at that time. And this is 500,000 cars at dealers and 100,000 cars a week at auction. The Rx-3 is pretty much a car that doesn't exist here except for collectors' car shows. The Rx-2, I imagine, is even harder to find. The reason why there aren't any is because people from Australia bought them all, and so if you want to buy one, I recommend getting one from Australia, or maybe even the USA is easier than Japan. Other cars you can get for a really good deal, but that's not one of them. If you can find one here, I'm guessing price would be somewhere around 4 million yen, or about $40,000 American, but only because they're really, really uncommon here. And that's just a guess on the price. I'm not sure how much.
Yeah, I would have actually guessed higher, but I know absolutely nothing about the price ranges for those things. I know a good bit about the Nissans, and you can buy Hakosukas and Fairlady's at auction, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the easiest way to find one, I'm not sure that's the word I want to use, is vintage car dealers, like specialist dealers.
That's the most expensive way. See, the problem with buying classic cars like that is the shops that sell them, they specialize in a very unique product that takes a long time to sell. So for them to stay in business, they have to charge giant markups on the price. We actually just were looking at a DTM replica car last week, and we know that car sold for 1.9 in auction, and the person was asking, I think, 5 million?
For it, yeah, for sale. Yeah.
5 million yen? 4 million? Somewhere in there. So they were looking at $30,000 markup on a car that cost them less than $30,000. So, pretty nuts. And I think that those cars, the RX-3 in particular, was really popular in Japan for racing, and so it has that heritage. It was successful in racing during a time that all kind of the baby boomers were really getting into motorsports, and so those people now have disposable income that they can use toward buying these super expensive cars that they loved in their childhood. So nostalgia has an effect on it.
For sure.
You want me to read the next one?
Yeah.
Is it a funny question?
It is to me.
This is from Looter Alex.
No. Diecast.
From Diecast Construction World, who you want to check out their channel. I don't know. I didn't check it out. Can you do a video on how to get a Japanese driver's license? And the reason why we're throwing this at Paul is because he has 200% more experience than I do.
Yeah, so what I want to do for the channel actually is I want to do its own video on that, because I could literally do probably an hour to 2 hour video on the whole license thing.
It's fun.
Tips and tricks, and it's an insanely complex process. So if you're from Canada, again, it depends on where you're from. If you're from certain countries, like Canada for example, You just come in and convert it. It's like a paperwork and like a $35 fee kind
It's
of.
because we have a really nice prime minister all the time.
Yeah, probably. So thanks, Trudeau. I don't know. So
I think it was before his time.
right. So they can just convert it, and from certain countries, Australia is another one. New Zealand, I think you can just get a Japanese driver's license. It's just a matter of paperwork and a fee. If you come from the United States, however, it's a very, very, very complex process. It depends on if you have a license already, how many years you've been driving, how clean your driving record is. It's a lot, and it can cost anywhere from $30 of filing fees to $1,200, depending on the process you go through. It's complicated. So look for a video in the future, but that focuses solely on that. But basically, if you're from the U.S. and you want a Japanese driver's license, expect to spend a lot of money and time, because you have to take a practical driving exam, you have to do a written test, and that's after you determine whether or not you want to take a manual test or automatic. That's interesting about driver's license here.
Mm-hmm.
They have 2 licenses, in case y'all don't know that.
A lot of countries have that too, just not U.S. and Canada.
Right. So you can get a license that's just for driving automatic cars, or you can get a license that
For driving good
manual cars and automatic cars. And in Japan, at least, the penalty, if you get caught driving a manual car with an automatic license, it's the same as driving without a license. It's the
Do
same
you know that
penalty.
firsthand? Yes?
No, not from a ticket, but I know that's the punishment.
Wow, that's insane.
Yeah, it's pretty hefty.
Yeah, so the Japanese driver's license, the practical part where you're actually sitting in the car driving, they make it intentionally impossible to pass unless you've gone to driving school, and so it's really nuts. And actually, Paul had to go through it a couple of times because of like, what are the stupid, or at least one of the stupid reasons why you had to, or failed the test?
It can be, it depends on the instructor. Some people will go and have no problem. Most people will have a lot of problems. But like, you know, okay, so one of the things before you start the test is you have to check underneath the front and the back of the car to make sure there's not a child or a dog or a basketball rolled underneath it. And if you forget to look, you fail. I mean, it can be stuff like that. Like, you have to take it that serious. When you go to get in the car to start your test, if you don't look both ways and then open the door and get in, if you don't adjust your mirror.
I like that, because what's the chances of like a 3-year-old running around in like the test area? Because they do it off of the public roads where they test you. They have like this labyrinth of roads that actually looks like it would be pretty awesome race.
Yeah, it looks like a test track, right.
And, gotta make sure there's no 3-year-olds here that are gonna run over that can't get into this area.
They want you to treat it like it's real life. I've heard that in some prefectures, and I've never seen it. But like, there's a little straightaway part where you drive in this straightaway.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard in some prefectures they have the
Paintballs?
no.
That would be awesome.
But there's a bucket with a ball in it, and the driver's test giver guy, he can like hit a button and it'll like knock over and the ball will roll out in front of the car, and you have to like react to it. I mean,
wow,
it's pretty hardcore though.
Okay, from Looter Alex. Derek, can you please contact me ASAP? Looking to buy a car that goes on auction later today and haven't been able to find anyone that doesn't seem sketchy. Besides yourself. Thanks. I added this question in here because we get this kind of thing all the time. Either comments on the videos, which is...
What?
I don't want to call people stupid, but that's not how you get a hold of us. Commenting on videos, because we do check the comments, but we don't, like, that's not our main job, is to check the comments on the videos.
Right.
And so if you say I want to buy a car in a comment in the video, there's a good chance that we're never going to see that. We get literally hundreds of comments every 2 or 3 days. I guess about 100 come in. And so yeah, number one, if you want to get hold of us, email us. But the second part, and the reason why I wanted to add this in, is because we get the people asking us, I want to buy a car that's up for auction today, and that just doesn't fly. Like, if you want to buy a car, you need to set up an account, you need to sign our terms of service, you need to send in a security deposit, and these things take time. And usually, when it's today our time, it's nighttime where you are, and the banks aren't open to send in the deposit. And so, even if you've been browsing the auctions and looking around at cars, and you've been thinking, maybe I'll buy a car, just waiting for the right one, what I recommend that you do is send in the security deposit. If a car comes up, then you can buy with that security deposit, and if nothing comes up or you find something locally, you can ask for the deposit back, and then we pay all the transfer fees for sending that back to you, and there's no processing fee for that. Unlike some exporters who are going to be like, no, we need to take $300 for our service fee. It kind of like it's sad watching the money go away. Like, goodbye, my security deposit.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I don't think that it's fair to charge people money just because they found a car landed. And we get some people saying, you can take some of the money because we know that you worked for us, but I just think that that's a little bit wrong too. Anyways, Derek Roach. do you want to read?
Yeah, because this is a response to something in your video. I'm not sure what video. So Derek Roach wrote, speeding is a crime, and you just said that everyone speeds.
It's more of a statement than it is a question, isn't it? Speeding is a crime, correct? And I just said
everyone speeds. I think this is from one of your other QuestionCasts, right? Like everyone's speeding.
I may have been commenting about me driving 20 over the speed limit and still being passed all of the time. Just like in every other country, nobody drives the speed limit because why would you? They're artificially low. In Japan, the speed limit on the fastest of the fast highways is 80 kilometers an hour. What's that miles an hour? Like 60?
No, it's not even. It's like 45-ish.
80 kilometers is 50 miles.
50 miles an hour? Yeah.
So imagine that, 50 miles an hour on the fastest roads. It's nuts, and nobody drives that fast. And when I say everyone speeds, that's a generalization, but I think that it's pretty accurate.
Most of my friends drive 50 miles an hour out of the church parking lot.
In Mustangs.
Yeah. So. Yeah.
Not saying that all your friends drive Mustangs. I just thought, driving out of parking lot brings up memories of Mustangs crashing.
No, I mean, right? Because I don't know where you're from, but it's like in the U.S. everyone goes 10 over, right? That is a general rule.
In the U.S. goes 5 over. My dad, when we were little, said it's always okay to drive 7 kilometers an hour over the speeding limit because that's 5 miles an hour, and you're okay with 5. And this was like when my dad was younger. They still had miles per hour in Canada, and then it moved over to kilometers an hour because we're a sane country, and that's why he said 7 instead of 10. But nowadays everyone drives 10, 15, 20 over. It's pretty common.
It depends on the road. Like anywhere where you live, you know what the road is, and you know how bad cops are, and you know if it's way artificially slow or if it's good.
I don't know if Derek Roach is chastising us here. Are we in trouble? Speeding is a crime. That sounds like we're in trouble.
I don't know. It depends. We do videos for Let's Drive or for this channel where we might drive something where we're gonna go 10 kilometers over because that's the flow of traffic. No, it's dangerous to go slower than the flow of traffic too. Yeah. So we're gonna go with the flow of traffic because that's how you do it. But we're not gonna race. There's a difference between going 10 or 15 kilometers over because the traffic's going that fast and then being on the highway and 9,000 RPM.
Right. So. Okay, Julius Uhop. Do you think that's how you pronounce that one?
That's maybe my guess.
Julius Uhop? Are engine swaps allowed in Canada? I think what the question he means is, are engine swapped cars allowed to be imported into Canada? And the answer is yes, there's no problem on that. But in the US, you're not allowed to do that according to import regulations, unless the engine is older than 25 years old. However, I don't think anyone has ever been caught for that. And so if you want to try it out, see if it suits you, you can go ahead and do that. But just know that if you ever get caught importing a car and they say, no, you're not allowed to bring this into Canada, Customs has a special regulation where you're not allowed to send it to Mexico and you're not allowed to send it to Canada. You have to send it to any other country other than those ones because they don't want people sending it to the country nearby and then driving it in.
Right. So. The U.S. is interesting because that rule I don't believe that rule is set up to stop engine swap cars specifically. I think it's a technicality because of the way a different rule is worded.
Mm-hmm. I know exactly why it is. And the funny thing is that, could you imagine them having databases of all the engine numbers of every engine out there and knowing where the engine number is on the engine? Like, oh yes, this one's an RB20 and the engine number is on the left side and you need a jack and you need to pull the engine out in order to see it.
Right. Stamping number on a 2JZ block or something. Yeah.
Yeah, so Ansar Khan says, I own a 2014 ZC32S Suzuki Swift Sport, and I was wondering, are these cars common in Japan? You said you wanted to answer this one.
I don't define common. You see them around, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you see them around a good bit. Cool cars. Funny enough, actually, that was a car I didn't know almost anything about. And I remember the first time that I saw one and paid attention to it was actually in Kyoto. We parked my rental car for the night, and my wife was with me, and she thought it was really cool looking. And my wife, for y'all figure this out, is not a car person, like, at all. I mean, she appreciates my car stuff, but she's not like a car person. So she always had these really interesting insights into cars. But whatever it was about a Swift, she said, I'd like to have one of those. So there you go. She likes them.
For people who haven't seen the Swift in Japan and only know like the American Swift or the Canadian Swift, in about 2001 or something, is it 2001? 2001, 2002, somewhere in there, they changed it. So from the really terrible Swift and changed it into an actually really good car. And it's a surprise to me that they don't actually sell that, or didn't sell it in the US before they kind of went under and they pulled out of the US. Might have been a car that saved them, but who knows. Very good cars. I really like them. Next one isn't so much a question, but a statement. It's from Super Nintendo Fanboy. I'm currently doing my final year in game design in university, and I want to open a video game studio of at least 7 to 8 people.
Mazel tov.
What's
Congratulations.
Oh. Jewish boy.
Okay.
So, if anyone wants to work for a video game company,
apparently there's one opening.
Don't make fun of him.
There's
He
one
probably
opening
cares
up.
a lot about his job. Super Nintendo Fanboy. Go check out his channel. Maybe he's got some information on his the types of video games that he wants to sell.
No, I wish him all the best. I do, because we could really use some really cool, fresh stuff in the game, and I'm a huge game nerd, so we could really use some cool stuff. But I think more the point of the statement, right, is that we sometimes get really random, seemingly random commentary.
Why do you think he wanted to post this on the questions video?
I don't know.
Like,
Can we have him do a question cast?
is he one of the people who just, like, our main channel, this one that you're watching right now, is finally at the level that we're getting spam from people that just want our viewers to check out their channel. So they'll write something like, I like this car very much, check out my channel, it also has cool cars on it. And I'm wondering if that was this person's intention, was to just spread the word, and he does this to multiple different channels? Or what? That's my guess.
I'm also a Super Nintendo fanboy. I'm not saying that this is me.
You didn't answer my question.
I know.
That's okay, you don't need to. Next one. Okay, Mark Plower says, could I import an R34 GTR? And, do you want to answer this one?
Yeah, it depends.
Yeah, most of the reason why I wanted to add this question is because this is a very, very common email that we get. And people send us emails and they say, hey, I want to import this car, but they don't tell us which country that they live in or really anything else. And so sometimes we look them up on Facebook. No, we don't actually do that, although we could. Is that creepy?
What?
Looking people up on Facebook?
Not if they're your ex.
Wait a second. Today's opposite day.
Then it's normal.
Yeah, and so especially we get this question from people that are in the USA, because I think not a lot, but some people think that we're an American company or we're a Canadian company, and so they just assume that those are known quantities, but
Right.
they're not, because we're in Japan and we have customers from many, many countries. And so for many of the countries, most of the countries, that car is importable, but for the US it's not, because it's not 25 years old yet. And the next question that people ask is, okay, well, how can I bring one in? Because I've seen some in my country. And then I usually send those people to Paul, because he has a better answer than I do.
I mean, usually it's illegal. I mean, that's it. Or someone has found some kind of loophole that they're using, and loopholes are almost always shut sooner rather than later.
And the funny thing about loopholes too is that it might be a loophole at, for example, the federal level or the state level, but not from state to state. And so even if the car gets in and is registered kind of in a way that it shouldn't normally be, it may be a problem later on. And
Well,
so
here's the big thing about the U.S. for U.S. customers, and we're going to keep saying this probably 100 times. Just because you go to your local DMV and you get a license plate and a title does not make your car legal. it doesn't matter. If it's got a license plate on it, that does not mean it's legal. The problem with the cars being imported is that they're federally illegal on a national level, federal law, not state law. You can trick a local DMV into just about anything. That's really easy to do.
And yet the funny thing is the local DMV is always the one who's like, no, I need more paperwork here.
Well,
when
we
you
run
supply
into that.
everything to them. You're
Right.
like, here's the stack of paperwork you need to import the car. And they're like, I don't know if this is okay. I'm not very good at my job, but I don't want to admit defeat. So I'll just say no.
Right, but then when you give them the paper that they want to see, even if it's faked, they'll take that because that's what they're used to working with, and it makes it easy.
Yeah.
So a lot of people get cars registered and they have tags and whatever, and they are not legal. Like we see S15s in the U.S. all the time.
Do you?
Yeah, a lot of people have S15s, not legal, and they'll say, "Oh, well, it was exempt because it was show and race, or it was some other thing which they don't qualify for." Not legal. So. No.
Right. And the last question here is from Paul Miller, and he says, what if two people want the same car?
So this question is basically, what if two people are bidding or trying to get the same car at auction? And this is going to be a video that Andrew and I are going to make for the tutorial series that's on this channel. But quickly, we can sort of go over the basics of it. We only place one bid at the auction.
We can only place one bid.
Right. So if two people want the same car, we place the higher bid. Have we ever had someone try and bid the same amount?
Yes. It's happened twice.
What do we do then? I actually don't know the answer to that.
The person
That hasn't happened to me.
The person who bids first of the two
Gets a bid place.
And the other person doesn't.
So this is going to probably alarm a lot of people and have a lot of questions about, but we'll cover this more in depth. But it's actually better for two customers to be bidding through the same place and not two separate places, and we'll explain why that is.
When you say the same place, you mean the same
like
exporter.
through us. Yeah, through the same exporter. So if they both bid through us, even though it sounds like we're only placing one bid and that's bad, it's actually better for you. But I'll explain that in the video because it's kind of complicated. I need little stick figures and stuff to demonstrate, or else it gets hard to follow. But yeah, so we'll place either the first one or the highest one. The first one if it's a tie, highest one.
It goes the other way around. We place the highest bid, but if it is a tie, we place the first.
Right. The first of the two, or three, or four, or five.
And it's really complicated to understand unless you have stick figures in front of you. And so if you don't understand at this point, then that's fine. We're going to get you some stick figures.
And we'll show you. But that's what we do. We choose one, and that one gets placed, and we don't notify the other people. But the lesson in this, as kind of the final thing, is that when you bid on a car, and we'll say this all the time, bid the amount that's the maximum amount that you're comfortable with paying for the car. And then it shouldn't matter. Because if the other person bids higher than you, then that's more than you wanted to pay, so you weren't going to win the car anyway.
It's correct. Okay, and that's all the questions there, and so we're going to shut down the video here. But before we do that, I want to remind you that you can post your questions in the comments section to this video. You can ask questions about anything that you want, and we will answer it, or we might answer it, or we won't answer it. One of those three categories. One last thing before we go. Welcome Paul to the QuestionCast. Welcome Andrew as well. He kind of sits there and answers the questions when we don't know what the answer is. He hands up like flashcards like this. It's really fun.
He's like our video IT guy or something.
Yeah, and the really, really final thing is if you take a look at the back wall behind us, it's this great expanse of whiteness, and it kind of throws out the color of the entire video. And so we want to fix that by having people send us things. And we've asked for this before, but nobody actually, well, I mean, a couple of people send us stuff, but we don't have enough.
Not stuff to hang.
And the good thing about having pictures or your art or advertising from your company, if you want that in our videos, is it's pretty cheap to send in post to Japan, and then we can post it up here on the wall and have it behind us for each one of these casts. They're going to be every 2 weeks from now on, and we may up that depending on your feedback. And so let us know how this one went. This one's a little bit over 30 minutes. We kind of want to have these videos around the 20-minute range, but let us know what you think about the format, about us sitting on the couch. Do you want us to be
laying on the couch?
We could do that. We could do backflips off. Can you do a backflip?
No.
I can, but I often land on my head, and so now that I'm 35 or 34, I've stopped doing it.
Yeah.
Okay, that's going to be the end of the video. Thanks for watching, guys. Let us know what you think.